Sure. I had the honor to lead the men and women of the Social Security Administration through a remarkable turnaround year. And when I left, when the election happened, very quickly, the Doge team, Donald Trump, Musk, really started focusing on this agency and going after both its reputation and its ability to serve customers. On the ability to serve customers front, they've cut like 10,000 staff, heading to 10,000 out of 54,000, and they were already at a 50-year low. But even before they started paying our workers, citizens of the United States, our workers for this earned benefit, even before they started paying them to leave, they were going after the reputation of Social Security pretty full bore with a few different, big lies about the agency. Big lie number one is that it's a Ponzi scheme. In fact, Elon Musk said on another podcast, he said, I think the whole government's a Ponzi scheme, but Social Security is the ultimate Ponzi scheme. Well, it's only a Ponzi scheme if he liquidates it and pays out the people that are currently in pay status and then robs everybody else that had been paying in their whole life to Social Security of that insurance against retirement and, an old age and poverty. Social Security is insurance so that every person can live in dignity. So Social Security, not a Ponzi scheme. It's gone on for 90 years. If it were a Ponzi scheme, it would have collapsed after a few months like every other Ponzi scheme. So it is a pay-as-you-go program. In other words, last year, dollars were paid in by people working in the economy. Those very same dollars were paid out to people in beneficiary pay status. And if there was a difference, which there is right now because of baby boomers, that difference was taken from the Social Security Trust Fund Surplus Reserve, which was built up intentionally since the last congressional adjustment to the 75-year forecast, which was in 1982.
So actually, can you explain the surplus reserve? Because I teach juniors in high school. And when I teach about Social Security, when I get to one of my favorite presidents, and probably yours as well, FDR, they even start continuing those myths into my classroom. Well, they call me Miss in New York City. They say, I don't know about other states, but they call you Miss in New York City schools. They said, Miss, isn't all the Social Security going to be gone once, because they know what boomers are. They're like, because of you boomers. I'm like, I'm actually not a boomer. Can you speak to that whole myth that I don't think they understand what you just mentioned, that there's this surplus.
Yeah. And by the way, here's FDR on his very last campaign stop. And this guy right here is my maternal grandfather, standing right over his shoulder. So you mentioned, and I just happen to have the picture. It used to be.
Oh my God! Okay.
Used to be on my wall at Social Security. His last campaign stop ever in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And as you can tell, I moved my stuff out, but I haven't gotten it back up on the wall here.
Oh yeah! Oh, that's amazing. I love that it was sitting right there.
Along with a pile of other stuff from my office.
Well,
so
maybe we can go through that later.
When I was in college, my friends and I used to say the same thing. Now that was on the verge or high school actually, that was on the verge of Congress adjusting the 75-year forecast.
Yes.
I don't operate on a 75-year forecast. I'm guessing, Ms. Rosenberg, you don't operate on a 75-year forecast.
Absolutely not.
I'm not aware of any other business that operates on a 75-year forecast, maybe big insurance companies, but Social Security operates on a 75-year forecast. So Congress can always tell, and we the people can tell through our representative, whether we're sticking to that 75-year forecast with all of the dynamics of different birth rates at different times. Now, when my parents, people of the Second World War, both of my parents were aviators, both of my parents served in the Second World War. When they came home from the Second World War, they had lots of kids. And so we've known this baby boomer bubble has been coming for a long time. So in order to cover the difference that once the baby boomers hit beneficiary stage, there are going to be a lot more people in pay status for a time than people that are working in the economy. Therefore, Congress back in 1982 built up a reserve above that 75-year forecast to cover the baby boomers. Now, what your students probably read, and what lots of people have been reading for 10 years, is the scary headlines that say, oh my God, meteor is going to hit Social Security by 2035, and it's all going to be wiped out. Well, not true. 17% of it would be wiped out. In other words,
Okay.
we'd all get a 17% haircut if we're in pay status. But 83% of it is still going to be paid for because it's a pay-as-you-go program. So if you had a family-owned business and your sister that does your accounting tells you you're going to have a 17% shortfall in your revenues or incomes in 2035, you wouldn't immediately run out, plaster going out of business, bankrupt in 2035 across your business storefront. So now it is something that Congress needs to address. And in my experience as a mayor and as a governor, legislatures tend not to address things until they're right up on the deadline, which is too bad. If they were to make, and actually there were many Republican senators who voted for my confirmation
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
when President Biden put me in as or nominated me for Social Security, and many of them said, "Well, in a second Biden term, you're going to have to bring people together to address that 2035 thing, and I'm glad we have a governor because you know how to bring people together." So that's kind of the deal on that 2035 thing. Now, it's not an unsolvable problem. In fact, it's very solvable. The reason why it is running out in 2035 instead of 2050 as they had thought it would, which would have lasted through, the retirement lifespans of most baby boomers. The
Yeah.
reason it's running out sooner than they thought back in 1983 is because of changes in the tax code that happened afterwards that greatly
Oh,
exacerbated income inequality and pushed more of the dollars earned for the next 40 years into the top 3-4%. Therefore, fewer dollars went into Social Security. We only pay up to the first, I say only,
yeah.
every American pays on every dollar earned up to $70,000. But after that, you stop paying any money in on any additional dollar into Social Security. So as a practical
Okay.
matter, you're in New York. That
Yes.
means somebody like Warren Buffett or Jamie Dimon or Elon Musk or Donald Trump, they pay in, or rather, they stop paying in 2 seconds after the ball drops from Times Square,
Wow.
whereas a teacher, a bus driver, somebody working at McDonald's pays in all through the year out of every paycheck. So
Interesting.
most people think that's not exactly fair. There is no cap on Medicare. And therefore, once people make $500,000, we should remove the cap and they should start paying into Social Security. And that would greatly solve that gap that now exists between 2035 and 2050.
That is such an amazing explanation because I don't think people hear words like cap and their brains shut off. But that explains it perfectly, and that will barely hurt their bottom line if they continue to contribute to it,
They
right?
wouldn't miss it a
Versus
bit. They say
they
they
wouldn't
don't
miss
even
it.
count on the. They say they don't count on the benefits. That they don't care about the benefits. All right. Well, if you
Right.
don't care about the benefits, you shouldn't care about paying in a little more. Because Social
Exactly.
Security,
Exactly.
Social Security isn't just security for the individual. It's security for society. And
Can you speak about that? Because I think we as a country, because of who's at the top right now, not me per se, but a lot of Americans have forgotten about this which I teach about all year, this concept of the common good. Can you can you speak about that phrase, common good? I don't think Trump is familiar with that one.
sure, Elon Musk, in fact, said in
Hmm.
another podcast, he said that he believes that empathy is the greatest weakness in the Western mind. But you and I and most Americans think differently. We
Yeah.
believe that the strength of our country is not based on the size of our armies or the amount of wealth we pile up. We believe it's based on the care and compassion we demonstrate for one another. First and foremost, of course, our immediate families, but also
Yeah.
our neighbors, the people that we share this country with and that we share this planet with. And so, as a nation, there is no greater act of caring and compassion and concern for one another that we have ever passed into law and maintained as a program than Social Security, which has never missed a payment in 90 years, a monthly payment through World War II, through the pandemic. And what is it about? It's about making sure that nobody in their golden years when they can no longer work, that they don't die in poverty, that instead
Right.
every person lives with a certain amount of dignity. It means that if people become disabled, which was signed, amended into the law in 1953, that they're
Mhm.
able to apply for the disability insurance that they qualified for by earning their way into the program. So it is an earned benefit, and it
Yeah, an earned
absolutely,
benefit. Yes, not an entitlement, right? They like to call it entitlement.
they like to
Yeah.
sneer when they say entitlement as if it's
Hmm.
crumbs
A
off their
bad thing.
table that they resent tossing
Yeah.
off their table
Yeah.
to people that are not deserving of it. In Elon Musk's
Mm.
worldview, I truly believe, listening and reading what he's said now that he's become our co-president, I truly believe that he thinks that people that are too old to work or too disabled to work, I think he sees them as wasteful inefficiencies and a drag on the economy. But you and I don't feel that way, and
No.
America is based on, that all people are created equal and that every person is accorded and should have in our nation, including children, by the way. People forget Social Security
Yes.
lifts more kids out of poverty, survivor benefits. In fact, Tim Walz
Mm.
can speak very eloquently to this because I do believe that as a boy, he
Yes.
received a survivor's benefit. Richie Neal, who's a House member from Boston and oversees Social Security from the minority standpoint also. So
Hmm.
the common good. I went to Catholic schools. We were taught, I'm painfully Catholic.
Yeah.
I went Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic
Oh,
University of America. And the
wow.
pillars of Catholic social justice teaching are
Hmm.
the dignity of every person, the common good we share, and the truth that we're all in this together, that there's a unity to spirit
Yes.
and matter, and that we're all
Yes.
part of, we're all part of God's creation.
That's beautiful. And I really like to think that most Americans feel that way. And speaking of which, a phrase that I hear more out of Trump's mouth than common good maybe ever is he keeps talking about his big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill. Now, which one, right? I think the one that's on our minds this week and why you were so eloquently speaking and debunking the Social Security myths on Sunday is because the House right now has a bill that they're voting on, and we've heard a lot about how Medicaid cuts would be happen no matter what, possibly dipping into Medicare. Is Social Security on the line with this bill? And if it's not with this bill, so is Social Security on the line at all under this administration? And if so, what can we do about it?
Yeah, the as I understand it, Social Security is level funded in this bill, which
Hmm.
means another year of staffing reductions. When Social Security gets so-called level funded, it has to make up 600 million in
Mm.
rising costs, whether it's from rent of the office spaces, 1,211 field offices across the country, or healthcare costs for workers, or cost of living adjustments for workers. Now, when that happens and the agency is only people serving people and IT systems, what happens is the modernization efforts get postponed to even further, and you're left with a just keep the lights on in terms of IT. And you let the Grim Reaper take out reduce your staffing. And so that's what's happened to Social Security these last 9, 10 years. Frankly, I wish the Democrats would insist that, at bare minimum, there be a restoration of the overhead allowance of
Mm.
Social Security so they can hire the numbers of people that they need. But the Doge people seem intent on cratering this agency. They've already paid 7,000 people to quit right now, or they fired them without even allowing them to get the
7,000.
7,000
7,000
so far.
so
I think
far.
they're going to go down to 10,000. They've intentionally created a hostile work environment. They told
Hmm.
people their jobs will be eliminated, but if you want to apply to go someplace else, you can. So some people are just trying to string out the time. If you live, for example, in Orlando, Florida, and work at Social Security there, or in
Yeah.
Birmingham, Alabama, and they tell you you can work in a field office in Spokane, Washington. As a practical matter, people aren't going to move their families if they own a house and their husband or wife works in that area. So they're going to go
Right.
down to 10,000. Here's here's one of the little known facts about Social Security's budget. 70% of it actually comes from that trust fund. And they're the only agency that runs a surplus, a $2.6 trillion surplus.
Say that again. Social Security is the only agency with a surplus
Only agency that runs a surplus.
that
So
runs a surplus.
when Elon Musk says, oh, Social Security is an entitlement that's busting the budget, it's not.
Yeah.
Social Security is mostly a self-financing agency that runs currently a $2.6 trillion surplus that is required to be invested into Treasury notes, which means then
Oh,
that
yeah.
Social Security actually lends the federal government money, not vice versa. And so if we wanted to allow them to restore their overhead, the funding for their overhead to the traditional before they started getting whacked and hacked and cut down to way below what they need as the baby boomers, grew their customer base to an all-time high. If you were to restore that to the 1.2% that it was until about 9 years ago, Congress could, because they're Congress, you
Yeah.
could take all of it out of the trust fund reserve, and it would only advance that depletion date of 2035 by 30 days. So why are we doing this?
What?
Why
So
are-
why? What is that? So real talk, real talk.
Yeah.
Why are and I try not to be. I am a Democrat, a proud Democrat. I try not to always be partisan with this stuff. But why does it feel like Republicans are always looking to attack or basically privatize Social Security? What is that all about?
I don't entirely understand myself because
Mm.
80% of Americans, regardless of whether they are Republicans, independents, or Democrats, believe that Social Security should be strengthened. In fact, the
Yeah.
same 80% believe that that solution we talked about before of asking higher earners to start paying in again is the way
Yeah.
to go.
Right.
So this is not an ideological thing. I don't really understand it. Until until an appropriations hearing of our subcommittee, of the subcommittee that oversees Social Security, the appropriations subcommittee that they call Labor H, by the way,
Labor age.
which
Okay.
is labor and health and other related agencies. Social Security doesn't even warrant an initial in the Labor Age Committee. But they had given Social Security an appropriations hearing in 9 years. We had our first one, but they gave it to us only after House Republicans all voted to cut the administrative funding of Social Security by $500 million. When I met
Wow.
with Chairman Adderholt, who chairs the committee, when I finally got to meet with them,
Yeah.
and by the way, he has about
We
11.
finally got to meet him. Right.
We have about 1,100 employees in Birmingham, or used to. There's probably 700 now. I made the point to him. I said, "This is a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah.
You could take the minimal budget that Social Security needs entirely out of the trust fund, and it would only advance that depletion date by 30 days." And I said,
That's
"So why are
wild.
we making people wait in line? Why are we creating backlogs and processing claims when this is a solvable problem?" He didn't have a good answer to it, but others have said that it is kind of a traditional playbook that they demonize, downsize, and then want to privatize things that they believe are entitlements that are part of the
Right.
nanny state. And for some reason, Social Security falls into that category, even though the two big expansions to Social Security after FDR, one was signed into law by Dwight Eisenhower,
Yes.
disability, and the other was signed by Richard Nixon, and that is supplemental security income in 1973. So I don't understand it. I honestly don't, and I
neither.
have a feeling though that where this current administration is concerned, I do think they have their eyes and their paws on that $2.6 trillion surplus reserve. I don't know what they want it for, but back on February 3rd, President Trump signed into law or signed an executive order ordering his Commerce Secretary to come up with a plan for a sovereign wealth fund,
Huh.
which is kind of a big pot of money that the sovereign can invest. It was not called a wealth fund of the Republic. It was called a sovereign
No, the
wealth fund.
sovereign. The
So that,
sovereign.
meaning
Right.
government, probably small s
Yeah.
rather than capital
Yeah.
S.
Yeah. Small s sovereign. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that could be what they want with it. Maybe
Mm,
they want to invest part of it in the stock market. I don't know what ultimately their end game is, but I
yeah.
can tell you, having served in the agency, that I do believe they've taken already 90% of the actions necessary to make this agency, go into a total system collapse that
Wow.
will interrupt benefits for some period of time, for the first time in 90 years. And it's totally avoidable, totally solvable problem. Hopefully, the democracy will wake up and stop them from doing this. I know behind closed
Yeah.
doors, there are a number of Republicans who have been urging that Elon Musk and Trump leave Social Security alone. There was an
Okay,
article in the
good.
Washington Post that said President Trump himself and his White House is very annoyed at how frequently Social Security is in the news,
Hmm.
and how all the articles reflect badly on him breaking that promise that he'd never touch it. Well, he's touched it with a chainsaw. Maybe he thinks
Mm.
that people won't think it's him because it's Elon Musk and the Doge young men, but it's this administration.
And just a reminder, just how much have they cut? One more time for people listening. How much of Social Security of the people who work there, percentage of the agency have they cut already in 100 days?
Yeah, they've cut 7,000 people from a total of 54,000. I believe that they will cut another 3,000 on top of that
Wow.
before we get to the end of this fiscal year, which ends in September.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the sad state of affairs. Can we knock down a few other big lies real
Yeah.
quick?
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. What are the other I love knocking down big lies. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorite
the
things.
other big lie.
Yeah.
So, illegal immigrants are stealing money and milking Social Security dry. That's why they
Yes.
come here
Are
anyway.
they? Are they?
Get out of it. And they are not. The truth
Mm-hmm.
is, illegal immigrants, so called, are not prohibited by law from receiving any Social Security benefits, nor can they even earn their way in to receiving credits later should they become naturalized citizens.
Oh, so they
But
can't retroactively even claim Social Security,
nope, not if
like
they're
when
working
they,
outside of legal status. And
people don't know that. Yeah.
but they contribute 25 billion to the rest of us. The other big lie that you hear them saying intentionally is they conflate, they confuse, they combine two different
Mm-hmm.
terms. One is undocumented workers or so-called illegal immigrants. The other is non-citizens. When Elon
Yes.
Musk came here, he came here as a non-citizen. He came here and was given, because he came here on whatever it was, a student visa or a work visa, he
Yeah.
was given, as required by law, a social security number. So, if you are a
Yeah.
non citizen who is working here legally, you are required to pay into Social Security and therefore be given a Social Security number. But Elon Musk, when in front of big crowds, will say, "Oh my God, look what we discovered at Social Security. 5 million non citizens receive Social Security cards as evidence of the Democratic conspiracy
Yes.
to create a permanent blue state so they could vote."
Yes.
No, having a Social Security card doesn't entitle you to vote in the United States. Here's
Of
another
course.
big lie. There is a zombie apocalypse that they
Yeah.
have with
Yeah.
20 million dead people. That would be a population the
Yeah.
size of New York roaming the earth
Right.
and the continental United States with checks spewing from their cadaverous pockets. It's not true. Social
We would have seen
Security is
that.
automatically alerted every time a state records a death certificate or a territory. Additionally, if Medicare should have somebody who is currently billing Medicare stop billing Medicare, we automatically get an alert because that's an indicator that the
It's
person passed
late.
away and maybe the death certificate is delayed in getting to us. Could be a miracle, but more than
Right.
likely passed away. That's another big lie. Social Security doesn't work. It's never worked. Its customer service has always been bad. Not
Mm-hmm.
true. Last year, Social Security delivered its services with a timeliness that in some cases was a 7 year high in the case of people effectuating retirement benefits. The speed to answer the 1-800 number for the 8 million people that call that was brought down from 42.5 minutes to 12.8 minutes. And it could be driven down even further, except now all of those things are going in the wrong direction. What's another big myth? I think we knocked down a few of them as we come to the end of our end
Yeah,
of
as we come to the end of our time. Yeah, and that was the one that I posted that clip of you talking about the zombie apocalypse of 20 million dead people taking Social Security, posted it on all the channels, Blue Sky,
Good. Thank
and a
you.
bunch of and, And, because as a teacher, I really don't like when the truth is not out there. So I really appreciate that. It was and the way you explained it was, perfect because people could relate. And they can't relate to zombies, but they could visualize this 20 million people roaming around. It doesn't make
Yeah, The
sense.
Walking Dead.
And a bunch of people in my comments were writing, yes, when my mom unfortunately passed, immediately no more checks. So the people watched your video and used, there was evidence in my comments to corroborate your true claim. So
Total
the
big
people
lie.
have spoken. Yeah.
What they're trying to do is they can't get their hands on that surplus reserve unless
Yeah.
they turn enough people against the agency and convince enough of the democracy that the agency that the program's going bankrupt, that it's riddled with fraud and abuse and
Yeah.
incompetence and waste and inefficiency. And it's not. They want to wreck its reputation, wreck its ability to serve the public so that then they can rob it. And that's
Yeah.
here's the other big lie about the waste and inefficiency. When Social
Yeah.
Security operated well, they operated on 1.2% overhead per benefits
Wow.
paid out. Any other insurance company in the private sector, Allstate operates on 19% overhead. Liberty Mutual, Liberty Biberty operates on 23% overhead. This agency has now been reduced to, I think, about zero point 0.7 of 1% overhead. And they could easily restore it to the 1.2, and it would still be
1.2.
the most efficient and the highest customer service of any insurance company on the planet.
Okay, so I cannot wait to post this for everyone to see it. Final question, we can make it quick. What can the people do now with this information, with their desire to keep Social Security and preserve and save our democracy? What can the people watching do?
They can call their members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans. They should call the White House and tell them, keep your hands off Social Security. It's an earned benefit. I've earned it. I've paid money in. Keep your hands off it, whether you're in pay status or not. If you've worked for more than 10 years, you've
Yeah.
earned your benefit. And if you've only worked for 5, you're 5 years along the way to earning your benefit.
Yeah.
The other really important thing that people can do, now they can't really rob Social Security or liquidate it as long as enough of the people understand what's truly going on. So knock down those big lies, bring the truth back to your own table of democracy, whether it's in your home or at work or in classrooms or with your colleagues, and knock down the big lies. The truth is Social Security has been here for 90 years. It can and should be here for another 90 years. And we just need to save it from these folks that want to break the institutions of the republic. And there's very few that are as important to our society or to the country as Social Security. So many people depend upon it in order to lead lives with dignity. So that's my pitch to people. Post online.
Yeah.
Post on your Facebook, bring the truth back to your own table of democracy. And that's the most important thing you can do for Social Security right now, because these cats do read polls, and when they burn their hands on they can pull it back. And let's hope it's not too late to pull their hands back off of Social Security.
Absolutely. Let's hope it's not too late. And with your advocacy and all the work you've done as a mayor, governor, commissioner of Social Security, and everything you're doing now, it's great to have you as an advocate for this. So thank you. And I'm going to post this immediately so that people can know what to do and have the
Thank you.
facts. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time, Governor. It's so great to meet you. I hope to meet you in person sometime. I'm here in New York City, but I'll be traveling around.
I hope so too. Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg.
Yeah.
Is that what your class
Yeah.
calls you?
Yeah, they call me, you know what they call me? They call me Yo Miss. That's their thing. Yo Miss. It's like, okay, Rosenberg's too long, but the polite ones call me Ms. Rosenberg. They know who they are.
All right. Well, Ms. Rosenberg, I'm going to be polite and thank you for your time and your interest in this. I really appreciate it.